Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Coast to Coast Sports Talk. I'm your host, Kristin, and here with me are our analysts, Cameron Collins and Big Dave Miller. There's been a lot of controversy in the sports world recently, so let's get started. This past week, in the final minutes of a game versus Texas Tech, Oklahoma State basketball player Marcus Smart tumbled into the stands and got into an altercation with a Texas Tech fan. Smart received a technical foul but was not ejected from the game. He later received a 3-game suspension. Dave, what do you think of Smart's actions in the subsequent suspension?
It's unacceptable what Marcus Smart has done, being a senior superstar that he is, to get into trouble like this is just unacceptable. Trying to drive down and block the shot, he fell into the stands, and you're going to hear stuff from the other fans. You're going to hear you can't stuff that I even can't say on here, but it's unacceptable what he's done. Now, there are certain things that trigger certain people with what people say. A racial slur is what Marcus Smart said. Jeff Orr said in the stands, and then Jeff Orr said that he just said, quote unquote, he's a piece of crap. So somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the gray area is where this translation is being lost. But with Marcus Smart's action to not just shove, but to give all his might and just shove this guy away, it's unacceptable what he's done. But the punishment, I think, is fine for the actions. He got a technical ejection. It was only like minutes until the game ended. It's not like he hurt or maliciously hurt anyone in the game. So to not eject him, I thought was a fair game. But overall, this 3-game suspension, I think the NCAA did fine with this to kind of like mellow it out. But
now, what are your thoughts on their reasoning for the suspension, though? Because they stated that there's no rules that define the kind of interaction that players can have with fans. So they had to go and use their sportsmanship and conduct section of the Big 12 rule book to justify the suspension. So I mean, that's kind of where I lose. To suspend him after not ejecting him, I think is a little wrong. I mean, obviously what he did was not okay, but that's why I think that an ejection would have been justified. Because if you eject a guy, now if you suspend him, there's not going to be as much question about the suspension because he clearly did something, deserved of an ejection, which will most likely, 9 times out of 10, an ejection results in a suspension of at least 1 game. And so, not ejecting him, they had to go and find, some sort of rule that they could justify the suspension with. What are your thoughts on how they justified it?
Well, and it's not like they suspended him for the rest of the season like the Alice in the Palace with Ron Artest.
Well, yeah, they were throwing punches.
Yeah, and that was an actual fight, though.
Yeah.
But this was just a shove, and I felt like almost like the ends justify the means, where you shove a player. They still had a chance to be in the game and win it. They gave Oklahoma State a chance with their best player in the game, but he can't go just off the hook after shoving a fan. Just whenever you're in any kind of altercation with someone that's not even on the court, I feel like that should at least be a 1-game suspension, because they're here to watch the game, not be attacked by a player no matter what you say.
But that's the problem.
They're on the court.
They're there to watch the game, but then they want to get involved in the game as if they're part of the game.
And got
that's
involved
the nature of the beast
game at
with
the end of the
basketball.
game by rushing the court.
Exactly.
So,
and that's the nature of the beast when it comes to games like basketball and even sometimes baseball. With fan interference in baseball that has changed the outcome of games. There's an entire, dilemma with the whole Steve Bartman incident with the Cubs in the playoffs. And so when you have a sport like basketball where you allow fans to be so close to the game to give them a better experience, because, you know, professional sport has become this, you know, glamorized thing in the media, and, you know, we want to be as close as possible. You're going to get involved. And I think if you want to be, not that I'm saying is justified that of shoving somebody, but if you want to try and get involved in the game, it might come back to haunt you. And so I just think it's just, if they had ejected him, I'd be okay with the suspension. But the fact that they just gave him a technical, the coaches pulled him out of the game, he didn't play anymore in the game, and then they subsequently suspend him, claiming the unsportsmanship and, you know, misconduct rule, which I'm assuming the sportsmanship and conduct rule is towards teammates, opposition, coaches. It probably doesn't even address fans, as they said. They don't have anything in the rule book that addresses conduct with fans. I feel like they kind of just stretched the rule book a little bit to justify the suspension.
Well, and plus, I don't even think they even had anything in there with fan interference.
Yeah.
Even after the Malice in the Palace, I don't feel like they put anything in there. Like, hey, if you shove a fan, you'll get X amount of game suspension.
Yeah, and that's what they said, is they didn't have a part in the rule book that addressed,
So I feel like it was fair
interaction
game
with
at that
fans.
point. Now,
So
if
they
it was like
kind of
a-
had to stretch a different section of the rule book to justify their suspension because they wanted to do something.
I felt like it was fair game for them. So.
All right.
The Canadian Olympic team currently leads the medal count right now with 3 golds, 3 silvers, and 1 bronze. Team USA is currently in 4th with 2 golds, no silvers, and 3 bronze medals. Cameron, do you think Team USA will win the medal count in these Olympics?
Of course I do. I mean, it would be a completely un-American thing to say no. You know, I have to have faith in Team America. You know, they've struggled a little bit early on. They've, you know, with Bodie Miller, ended up, you know, only getting 8th in, you know, the event that he was heavily favored to win. This was probably his last Olympics at 35 years old. He was the favorite to win the event and didn't come out on top. But, you know, we've still got events like the half pipe to go with, you know, guys like Shaun White and Danny Davis, who we'll talk about in a little bit. You know, they're heavily favored to win events like that. You know, USA tends to, like, the Netherlands dominated the speed skating. Team USA tends to be like that with snowboarding. You know, we took a gold in the men's snowboarding slopestyle, the women's snowboarding slopestyle, and I'm gonna be confident enough to say we're probably gonna take at least a gold in the half pipe. So I think, you know, as we see more events being played, we're gonna start to catch up in that medal count. You know, we're only in 4th, so we're not out of it. But I mean, we have to expect that, right?
Oh, yeah, you have to expect it, but the fact is, will they, though, that is the thing. When you put out a monster number of athletes out there, do you think some of them are even better than the people who have been dedicating their lives to this since they were 3 years old in Russia or 3 years old in Norway? Because if you look at the overall medal count throughout all the Olympics combined, Norway is in first place with over 50 more medals than the U.S. So I feel like Norway, especially in the Winter Olympics, really has some dominant sports figures in there. You have some of these events that go on that aren't heavily popularized in America, that are heavily popularized in other countries, like the skiing biathlon. You know, how often do you hear about contests going on with that? Cross country skiing is big here to an extent, but with snowboarding, that is the biggest thing here at these events, and maybe even hockey as well. But everyone's expecting Canada to take that away for sure. So I was like, people like Shaun White and Danny Davis, Sage Klostenberg as well. I feel like USA has certain events that they can just that they should be sweeping in, like the Netherlands did in the speed skating. So to have a heavy altitude of players just out there and just saying, since we have the most, we're probably going to win the most, that's not really the best thinking. China can put out the most athletes because they have the most people in their country. Doesn't mean that they're going to go out there and win every medal. So I have full confidence in the U.S. doing this. It's just the fact of will they go through is the question.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it's definitely going to take is, I think we're going to have to take some medals in some of those events that we're really not expected to. You know, and that's where I think we'll catch up a lot of ground in the medal count is, you know, we're expected to take medals in the half pipe, but we're probably really not expected to take one in curling. So, if they go out and surprise and maybe take a bronze or even a silver, in a sport like that, or like you said, hockey, Canada's kind of favored to run away with that. But if we can at least medal, take a silver, take a bronze, that would help in a big way in boosting the medal count for sure and getting us up towards the top.
Now, is it better to have the most medals overall or the most gold medals?
Well, they rank it. The golds count for more. That's Canada is in first because they have 3 golds, 3 silvers, and 1 bronze. The Netherlands have 3 golds, 2 silvers, and 2 bronze. So they have the same number of total medals, but they have less silvers, so they're 1 rank lower. So golds do matter, but if you have the same number of medals as somebody else, you need the golds to bump you up. But if we end up with, say, 50 medals compared to the next team at 45, it's not going to matter.
United States snowboarders Danny Davis and Shaun White have both expressed displeasure and concerns on the conditions of the halfpipe in Sochi. Other snowboarders have also expressed concern, stating that the transition between the two 22-foot walls is bumpy and full of sugary snow, which does not make for ideal conditions. Practice was postponed Monday so halfpipe shapers could make adjustments. Dave, what are your thoughts on these conditions?
I mean, it needs to be perfect, if not near perfect for this. When you hit the powdery snow, it is going to slow you down a lot. You're going to lose speed. Won't be able to do as many flips in the air as you're expected to do. So even with the conditions, even with the weather and climate conditions in Sochi going into these Olympics, it was also concerned of will it be even like cold enough to keep all the snow like compact and tight in there. So with Shaun White and Danny Davis being the big names that they are, I don't have a problem with them expressing like concern about this. Will they actually do anything about it is the thing. Like you said, the shapers are going out there trying to pat it all down there. So I feel like if the event does have to be pushed back, it should be pushed back to make sure it's all in perfect condition. When you have like the events like the cross-country skiing, that all needs to be perfect snow as well. They have tracks lined up for the skiers, like going up in the spot, staying in the lanes, and you can transition into another lane. It's just not wide open snow, and then people are making tracks in front of them. So the conditions need to be, like I said, near perfect for them to do well in this event.
I think that these Olympic athletes need to suck it up and just go out there and perform. These guys are supposed to be the best athletes in the world at this sport, and they're going to cry and whine about half-pipe conditions. I think that they should be able to go out and perform no matter what. If the conditions are bad, they all have to compete on it. So I think, instead of whining about it, they should go out and practice and go out and perform.
I mean, are you going to be happy if you're on say Heinz Field, because there is a lawsuit out there about how poor the conditions have been because of both pit football and the Steelers playing on the same grass and have it being so tore up that some people can't withstand on their feet and it might break their ankle. So you're going to say that if the condition isn't up to standard and they're going down and they lose their balance and they fall off and they land on their kneecap, are you going to blame it on them not being the best athlete in the world, or are you going to blame it on the conditions of the half pipe?
If the conditions were to the point where it's going to risk injury, that's another story. But if they're just not to the ideal likings of these athletes, I think maybe some of them have a little bit bigger heads than they should. Because, if it's to the point where they're going to get hurt, then obviously that needs fixed. But they're complaining because it's a little bumpy. Snow gets bumpy. Suck it up.
That's why it's so smooth on each end. That's why you see all these like wicked tricks that they pull off. So if you want to see U.S. take home a gold medal, you want to see these standards be up to par.
But hey, I'm just saying, to go along with your Heinz Field argument, if Heinz Field's torn up, it's not like one team has to play on the torn up field and another team's playing on nice turf. They both have to play on it. So, it's a level playing field no matter the conditions they have to compete on.
All right, it's been a great discussion so far, but we have 3 more topics to get to after the commercial break. Welcome back, everyone. Our first topic that we're going to talk about is going to be about the NFL. The Washington Redskins have allegedly received emails from Native Americans in support of the use of the name Redskins. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell stated that the decision to change the name will be up to the Redskins team owner, who has stated he has no plans to change the name. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
I feel like this shouldn't be as big a story as it is, but because people are being offended by this, my opinion on this is that the name should stay as it is, because even though it is saying the specific color of a certain race, this in being the Native Americans, saying a certain color of their skin, it can be offensive towards the actual like Native Americans, Indians, and all that. However, even though their logo is a picture of, as we saw there earlier, just a Indian head with the skin that's red, I still don't see a huge problem with this. It's not like they're deliberately going out of their way to say that like Redskins are bad, to say Indians are bad, and so on and so forth. But you look at like the certain crowds that they draw in, and remember from the '80s, it was the Hogettes. That was nothing to do with Indians as well. It was just fat guys dressing up to look like pigs, and then get into person's head, just like trying to get into the dog pound. So overall, the Redskins thing has been causing so much controversy that I don't even blame Roger Goodell for handing it off to someone else, for Daniel Snyder for him, because that's his problem. It's his team. Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League, not in charge of changing players' names, or not players' names, team names. So whatever Daniel Snyder decides to do, whether he keeps it or not, I'm always in favor of just staying old school and keeping the name how it is. So I like the Washington Redskins.
I think if it's true that all these Native Americans are emailing them saying they're okay with it, they don't have a problem with it, blah blah blah, then it's fine. It's not a big deal if it's not hurting anybody. But if there is a wide outcry of this is offensive, kind of the way I look at it is it's just football. It is just a game. So if the name is hurting people, it's not going to hurt anyone to change it. And we talked about this back in the middle of the football season, when it kind of first came out. I had said it only seems like a big deal to us because it's all we've known. We've always known them as the Redskins. If they change the name 10, 15 years from now, we won't even think anything of it. And that's kind of like I said, I'm okay with like the Chiefs, because it's no different than like the Buccaneers or like the Captains. It's a level, it's a ranking in a tribe. It's same thing as like the Generals, it's a ranking, or even the Braves, because it's a type of tribe. But when you're classifying a human being by the color of their skin, it just doesn't seem right, because if you translate that to any other type of person, it just doesn't sound right. And so basically the way I look at it is, it's just football. It's just a football team. Who does it hurt to change the name? And in 5 years, everyone would already be acclimated to the new name, and it wouldn't even be a big deal. So, but like I said, if it's not offending people and it's not hurting people like we're hearing, then leave it alone. It's not a big deal. But if there is this outcry of offense, then I don't think it hurts anybody to change it.
Washington has the worst luck with teams with bad names, because you had the Washington Bullets back in the day, and some people didn't like that because of like the uproar of guns and everyone having that. So when Gilbert Arenas was playing for the Washington Wizards and he brought in guns into the locker room, then people like literally freaked out about this, because they tried to avoid this as the Washington Bullets. So now the Washington Redskins are being targeted. All of a sudden, the Washington Capitals are going to be targeted because capitalism will be dead. So everyone's going to just say, I'm offended by this, blah, blah, blah. So I just think it's just getting to the point where people want to just change everything in the world because they grew up to that anything is possible. So I feel like because I don't know what it is like to be offended like that. So maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but I feel like the name should just stay as it is, because someone approved it back then. It should still be approved now.
And I mean, like I said, and it goes with any name. I think if it's hurting more people than it's not, then there's no reason you shouldn't change it. Like if it's not going to hurt anyone to change it, I mean, as if people were offended by the Chicago Bulls, say there's this giant mistreatment of Bulls in the world, and all these people are offended by the Chicago Bulls. It's not going to hurt anybody to change the name. So I think, if it's going to do more good to change it than it is to leave it, like I said, it's just a sports team name. It's not, a fixture in our American history that, you're completely offending, the course of our history and our country or anything like that,
The steel industry went down. They didn't change the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I know, but like I said, it just if it's hurting more people than it's not, which like I said, if this whole Redskins thing, if there is this response from all these Native Americans that they're okay with it, fine, no big deal. But if it is hurting more people than it's not, then I do feel it doesn't really hurt anybody to change it.
Just a few days ago, in an interview, Missouri defensive end Michael Sam came out as being gay. Sam was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year and will be the first openly gay player in the NFL. Dave, what do you think of this recent information?
I feel like it's very accommodable, I think, of Michael Sam to go out and just, be brave enough that to not be at the bottom of the totem pole again and still be in this dark place where he can't be himself. So I completely understand why he's going to do this now, before the combine, before the draft and all that, before a team looks at every single thing about him and every facet about his life. He just wants to make sure that a team can accept for who he is. For draft stock to fall, as certain analysts are saying, that can be a little extreme. So I feel this is big for Michael Sam himself. For it to be blown out of proportion as it has been since yesterday, I feel like it's a little much so. It's only one person. Now, are they going to make the same deal when a baseball player does it? The first, are they going to make a big deal about it with a first for everything? Because no one knew who Jason Collins was until he actually came out and said that he came out of the closet as well. So what I feel like, all this is being blown out of proportion, but I respect Michael Sam on how he handled this and how Missouri handled this as well, keeping it to himself, because the team knew about it for the entire year. It's just he didn't want to go out and play like that, because then, I had barely any idea how good he was until I saw the stats whenever he came out. So kudos to him for keeping it under the wrap until he had a breakout season and is going into the draft. So I really think Michael Sam handled this the best way possible.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, all the talk about it affecting his draft stock is ridiculous. Anything like that. How will he be accepted in the NFL? And it's just kind of like it shouldn't matter. Whether you support his lifestyle or you don't. Being an NFL football player, it's a job. That's like going to work. And any of your coworkers' sexual orientation should have no effect whatsoever on your work. All that should matter is him being a quality football player and a decent human being and a respectful teammate, and that's really all that should be a difference. And like you said, he was open about it with his team in Missouri, and they accepted him just fine. He's coming out about it now because he just wants to come in, everybody knowing, everybody being informed, so that way he's not making these connections with these teammates, and then he does it then, and maybe people would have not gotten as close to him if they knew it, because some people just can't handle that information. And so with everyone knowing it ahead of time, you're going to know who your real supporters are, who you're really bonding with, because everyone knows, so they're not going to run. Because some people will do that, and it is terrible that in this day and age, some people do react that way. Whether you support the lifestyle or not, it shouldn't matter how you treat another person, and how you support them, especially as a coworker in a job. So like you said, I mean, I think the media is kind of blowing this up a lot bigger than it should be. Because like you said, it shouldn't be a big deal. You know, his sexual orientation should have nothing to do with the game of football. But, you know, in a few years, all these firsts will be out of the way. And we won't have this, big media explosion whenever there's another openly gay player in sports.
What's going to be interesting is the rookie hazing, and is it going to draw the line of
I was going to touch on that.
whether or not it's going to offend him or not. So even veterans are actually need to watch their steps now, because it's like treading ice at this point, very thin ice.
Well,
so.
And that was the one thing I was going to say. Antonio Pierce had they had asked Antonio Pierce, if he was still playing, him coming into training camp first week, how would you treat him? He said, you treat him just like any rookie coming into training camp. He better be bringing the donuts. He better be carrying pads. He should be the first one in there and the last one out. And as long as all rookies get hazed. We all saw Tim Tebow's haircut with the Broncos when he was a rookie. And so as long as people aren't chalking it up to, oh, well, his hazing is worse because of his sexual orientation, as long as it's just viewed as, they haze all the rookies. He's getting treated no differently than anyone else, which I don't think there will be any problems with it. Like I said, there will be some players that aren't comfortable with it, that can't handle it. And, like I said, that's when you know who your real, your true teammates are, because, they already know. They're coming in, you're coming in with them having that information, and, they're going to support you or they're not, one way or the other.
This past week, Alex Rodriguez dropped his lawsuit with the MLB and has accepted his 162-game suspension. Months earlier, the suspension was lowered from over 200 games down to 162. Although Rodriguez has never publicly failed a drug test for PEDs, the MLB believes they have enough evidence to go along with the biogenesis scandal to suspend A-Rod. Cameron, what do you think of A-Rod's situation?
My opinion on the whole situation is it bugs me the fact that he's never failed a drug test, and yet Major League Baseball can suspend him for 162 games. Regardless of whether he did it or not, like Ryan Braun, he failed a drug test. His suspension is deserved. He failed 2 drug tests and got away with the first one. His suspension is deserved. A-Rod's suspension is off of suspicion. That is what they're suspending him off of. He didn't go and take a drug test, failed, okay, you're suspended. They had somebody admit to injecting him with PEDs, and they have supposed information saying that he did it. But he's never failed a drug test, and they're going to suspend him. That's the only issue that I have with, the whole A-Rod deal, because he's never publicly failed a drug test. That doesn't make sense.
Now, and I agree with you with the never failing a drug test is what really bugs you. It's suspicion. But with Ryan Braun on his second failed drug test, because the MLB screwed it up the first time with Ryan Braun. So technically it is a first failed drug test for Ryan Braun, because on the second one he was clean. So whenever he failed the second one, though, the first one, he accepted the punishment right away rather than trying to abolish it. They've been trying to get A-Rod. So basically what the MLB was trying to do is to get a figurehead for who to not model after. And
absolutely.
So with Ryan Braun accepting this punishment, you can't really make Ryan Braun the figurehead, give him the same suspension as the other 11 players that were involved with it, including Nelson Cruz and Johnny Peralta. So for the MLB to maybe send a message towards anyone, I feel like A-Rod fits the profile the best, because you said someone admitted to doping him with
Well, just
PEDs.
like they already tried to send a message not inducting anybody into the Hall of Fame last year because it's the quote-unquote steroid era.
Yeah.
Well, if they're all doing it, then what's it matter? Put an asterisk next to their name. Who cares? Because if they had some of the best stats in the game, they should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and no, that's the part that I agree with you. I feel like Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. I feel like Mark McGwire should be in the Hall of Fame, and all of the other players as well. But just to not, when the whole drug policy came in effect in 2004, 3 years after Barry Bonds broke the home run record and then on pace to break 700 in the all-time record, that's when they started really tracking down on these players that were busting out all these home runs. It was the long ball era. So the fact that they needed someone that was still playing in the era that fit the profile. A-Rod fit the profile the best, and that's why they're going after him.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're trying to put him as the poster boy for this is what not to do.
Yeah, I don't blame A-Rod for dropping this lawsuit, because I felt like he was not going to win this in the first place. It was just going to be a constant struggle for him.
Yeah.
So it's smart of A-Rod to drop this, and as much as I think his career's done, he still has time this entire year to get back into the game, because he struggled coming back halfway through the year after that hip surgery. So I feel like A-Rod should take this not really as a learning lesson, but as time to better himself, for himself to break the home run record. So, because he still has 2 more good years to put together before he hits 40 years old. Like Derek Jeter, he's already 40, and he's going down the hill, and he's still putting up good numbers. So A-Rod just needs to focus on himself now for the year and focus on next year.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is I've been a noted Yankee hater. I've never liked A-Rod, but the way he's been treated, the MLB has treated him over the past year or so has kind of made me rethink my opinion of him, because how much he's been wronged and the way he has been. I really believe he's been targeted. Like you said, they want somebody who has that superstar status, who they can find that did wrong, so they can look at that guy and go, well, if they could get him, they're gonna get me. So it deters other players from doing it. And just like with when the Dempster intentionally threw at A-Rod, it was like he's never failed a drug test, and you're gonna throw at a guy on suspicion. And just the way he's been treated over the past year or so, like you said, he's smart for dropping the lawsuit, because I agree it would have just cost more money for him and just wasted more time than anything that he could be using to get in shape, work on his swing if he doesn't want to retire yet, just get in better health and just prepare for when he comes back.
Well, that's all we have for you guys tonight. If there are any sports stories you'd like us to cover, go ahead and like our Facebook page or our Twitter account and leave a suggestion throughout the week. Once again, for Cameron Collins and Big Dave Miller, I'm your host, Kristin Karam, and we'll see you guys next time.